Do you hear anything? It's pretty quiet. It's quiet because it's 4:09 a.m. on a Monday morning. Most people are not up at 4:09 a.m. It's a random time. And my alarm barely went off like 20 minutes ago now. So I'm just sitting here very quietly in the dark, waking up, trying to warm up this freezing cold space because there's no heat and it's like 32 degrees outside. Oh yeah, that reminds me, I have to call the city to file a complaint against the Greenville group for no heat in here. So I have to have the burner on the stove going. But other than that, it is very, very, very quiet. And yet, over the last 20 minutes, almost at the same time, someone sitting in the bathroom directly behind the stove right here, and someone directly below in 76, and the bathroom of 78 is right behind the stove. At the same time, these two separate individuals who seem to be working together started making slamming and banging noises, not just once, but several times at the same time. This happened as soon as I started sitting up in bed and scratching my eczema, which I have. I have bad eczema. It itches like crazy. It's just infuriating. So if you have eczema, you have to scratch it because it just itches. It itches and it doesn't stop itching. So they have this thing with making slamming and banging noises when I do things in the privacy of this living space that are quiet, not that unusual, and personal, but might be considered triggering to certain sex offenders. For some strange reason, these sex offenders, and I'm including Jason DaCosta, the recent resident of Unit 88 directly next door, would start becoming violent based on what I would do in the privacy of this living space that is silent, so they should have had no knowledge of it. And yet these things trigger these sex offenders into becoming violent against the walls and the ceilings that my unit shares with their units almost every single time that I do these certain things. And right now I'm sitting here scratching my eczema, sipping my coffee, and some pieces of psycho trash, perving, creeping rejects in 76 directly below, and the bathroom of 78 directly behind that stove where I have to keep an open flame because there's no heat in here, started slamming and banging things against the walls that my unit shares with their units almost at the same time 15 minutes ago when I started sitting up in bed and scratching my eczema. Mr. DaCosta, the fat, perving, pedophile pig, is no longer in 88, but when he did live in 88, he would also start becoming violent and aggressive against the shared wall of my unit whenever I would sit up in bed. With barely any alarm going off. Nobody should have heard that because I usually shut it off right away. And then if I started scratching my eczema or, picking my armpit, Mr. DaCosta would start violently slamming things against the wall to my unit. Mr. DaCosta, the fat, perving, pedophile pig, has since been moved out of 88 for trying to break my door down several times and threatening to kill me. I haven't seen him since he moved out, thank God. But he was also part of this triad of perving, creeping, psycho filth in 76, 78, and 88 that the Greenville group seemed to be really fond of placing in all three adjacent units to mine. Over the last 5 years, there has been a continuous litany of mentally disturbed, psychotically perverted, violent, asswipe pieces of shit that the Greenville group have placed in all three adjacent units to mine almost continuously. And they're even awake at 4 o'clock in the morning when I am completely silent. I'm not making any noise. It is way too early for any normal people to be up, but I have to be up because it takes me a while to get ready due to the fact that the water to my taps suddenly starts to stink when I'm trying to finish showering, when I'm covered with soap and shampoo and I'm perfectly clean. And then I have to go down the hall to the common bathroom where the water never stinks like anything, because the smell is not coming from me or anything that I'm using. It's coming from the water that the Greenville Group is apparently being permitted to be contaminated by the same fat, disgusting, hideously ugly, mentally disturbed piece of shit that they've been using to do their dirty work for 11 years now, a pedophile piece of trash, a perving, creeping psychopath named Jasmine Irizarry. Irizarry, that fat thing, has admitted in writing on social media to contaminating the water to my tap. And predictably, it is always showing signs and evidence of contamination whenever I try to use it, especially when I have to go somewhere to leave the building, and then the water starts to smell like vomit. And if that water comes into contact with any of my towels or my washcloths or my hair, then also those things smell like vomit. No water should ever smell like anything unless it is maybe chlorine, because that is the one thing that the municipal water treatment system is permitted to use when it is treating the municipal water supply before it gets to your tap. If your water smells like anything other than a small amount of chlorine, then somebody is fucking with it, obviously. And the Greenville Group have refused to do anything about that. So, violation of the Clean Water Act, which is a crime, a federal crime, punishable by up to 20 years in prison and a $55,000 fine, that can be charged to the Greenville Group right now. And water testing would show that there's probably a whole ton of illegal contaminants in the water from my taps that is not found in the water from the bathroom down the hall on the same floor. So right now I'm sitting here and the psycho trash, mentally disturbed, desperate perverts in 76 and the bathroom of 78 that seems to be intermittently occupied. Sometimes days go by and I don't hear any noise in 78. And then all of a sudden there's somebody in there. So I'm thinking somebody is accessing 78 who lives elsewhere in the building. Whoever's in the bathroom of 78 right now seems to be housed elsewhere in the building, and then they access the bathroom of 78. Or maybe there's two people in 78. One of them is quiet and the other one seems to be in charge of getting all disruptive and aggressive. There seems to be two behavioral thumbprints occurring in that bathroom these days. There's one person who seems to be fairly quiet and uses that bathroom for normal purposes and doesn't get violent or disruptive. And then there's the other psycho piece of shit that uses the bathroom of 78 for slamming and banging and then propagating sickening amounts of cigar smoke. And engaging in the same exact identical pattern of surveillance-based stalking, harassment, and assault from behind the wall of 78 now, as they did for 11 years. And that's Irizarry, the disgusting, hideous, mentally disturbed pedophile pervert that the Greenville Group claims as their surveillance expert. So when this happens at 4 a.m. concurrently from two separate units at the same time, that's not a coincidence. By statistical definition, it cannot be. Stay tuned, folks. It's going to be an interesting morning.